is Jackie B. Peterson. I'm your host today, and I'm the author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Encore, Solo, and Creative Entrepreneurs. You know, those of you in one-person business, this is a very fast-growing way of being in business. One of my colleagues just sent me a notice that came out from the Small Business Administration, and their statistic is that 78.5% of businesses never hire employees. They are solo businesses. So we've got a lot of you out there that we're talking to. And that's who Better, Smarter, Richer is aimed at. I want you to know that traditional businesses are distinctly different from solo businesses. There's simply some things that you need to do if you are going to be financially successful as a solo. And those are the 7 principles that are outlined in my book. So I hope you'll go to the website, bettersmarterricher.com. You can download my free ebook. You can buy the book in either a hard copy or a downloadable copy. You can sign up for our newsletter, and we'd love to have you. It's helping us create the tribe that is having a voice in the solo pro world. And you can join the conversation on the blog. Also, of course, tune into this weekly radio show on Solo Pro Radio, just like you're doing today. So we've got lots of things coming up this year and lots of good guests lined up, and we're really looking forward to talking about encore entrepreneurship as a part of solopreneurship. You know, one of the easiest ways for people to be in business is to be in business as solos, because what you're doing as a solo is that what you're going to do is you're going to take advantage of what you know. You are going to take advantage of the opportunity and the expertise that you already have, and you're going to turn that into a way to make money for yourself. That's what it's all about. So anyway, our guest today is Dana Corey, and she is the owner of a business where she works with people on building and strengthening their relationships. This is great because relationship building is one of the most important things that you can do today to either build your business, build your social networks, and that always improves your health and improves your financial health as well. Dana calls herself the modern relationship expert. Of course, strong relationships are something we all need and crave. We are not meant to be loners out there. So learning from Dana about her skills and her business is going to be a great start for the new year. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So hello, Dana.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, good. Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. They say relationships are a key, you know, in the way that we interact with the world and in the way that we build our businesses, build our social lives, build our family relationships. I mean, this is big stuff that you're working in.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, it's just fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Tell our listeners about ourselves. You know, one of the things I've learned in doing this show for the last couple of years is that my solo guests, solo entrepreneur guests like you, have taken often a long and circuitous journey to arrive at where they are today, but when they look back at it, they can see that everything that they have done has fed into who they are as a business now. So tell us your story.
Well, I really have been coaching. It's so funny that you say that because when I look back on my life, I'm like, how did I get here? Mm-hmm. But the truth is that I've really been working and coaching people for almost 30 years, since I was in my 20s. And I started off being trained and working with a large personal growth company, working with people from all walks of life when they would get triggered by their stuff right in the moment. And then I ended up training people to do that very thing. So that was pretty exciting and really great training for the future. I took some time off to raise my kids and then realized that I needed something more. So I started working in direct sales and the home party plan business. And I actually worked and coached and mentored over 250 women to business success during that time.
In the home party business?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yep.
Fabulous.
Yeah, it was
That's
great.
A relationship business.
Oh, it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships with your customers and hostesses, and really it's all about growing, personal growth.
So is that one of the businesses that's called direct marketing, and you build your group, and you get an override on what other people sell, and you hold home parties? Is that the kind of thing that you were doing?
Yes, exactly. The home party business is a segment of the network marketing business, but it works that same way. You mentor people, and then you get paid by the company extra based on the sales that your team does. And,
that direct sales, as it's called, there is a huge industry group around that, and there's a lot of people going into those businesses, particularly, as we've said, our emphasis is going to be on how encores, people 50 plus, we're going to talk a lot about that this year, can supplement their income, and a lot of times they've looked at direct sales as being a way, whether it's some of the popular ones or the well-known ones, like Amway or some of those, or whether it's some of the other direct sales. So you were training people in direct sales.
I was, and I built 2 teams in 2 different companies over a 16-year career in direct sales.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the last, I worked with a company that, we cooked at people's homes. And then I just recently worked in a company where specifically helping women have more fun in bed. There's no other way to say that.
Wow.
But
wow.
For me, one of the things about that is what really led me to what I do now is that I realized that the topic that I was working with women on was just a symptom of a much larger conversation about relationships in general. And
wow.
And so that's what has really led me to doing what I do now, which is talking to people about how do you have a great relationship, and not just with, your primary significant other person, but how do you have a great relationship with your friends? How do you have a great relationship with your siblings? How do you have a great relationship with your colleagues and with your employees and with your boss, right? Because it's all the same thing, really.
It is all the same thing. I've talked to another consultant on this show, and he speaks and works with organizations around the concept of emotional intelligence. And, the key in emotional intelligence is that you have an awareness of your own, what's going on for you, and therefore of the impact that you are having on other people and the impact they are having on you, that you have an awareness at that level. And I would think that, even though you don't frame it that way, you frame it as relationship building, that you're talking about the same thing. You're talking about how can I, work in my life to build all these great relationships with family, friends, colleagues, and in business. Is that right?
It is right. It always starts with you. I mean, it's never about anybody else really, because you can't control what they do and how they react and how they're going to interact with you.
Boy,
the only thing you have control over is yourself. And so in order to have the relationships that you want, it's really internal personal work, not how can I affect those people around me.
Wow. Boy, this sounds like experience one wisdom that you have here. It's actually it's really simple, and most of us know this intellectually. But when it comes to our lives and comes to circumstances where we feel the victim or not even that, where it's just like we just don't know what to do, that intellectual knowledge disappears. It doesn't connect really to where the problems lie. So we react rather than stopping to think about what we're doing or what the implications are, what we're doing. We get into our, emotions and react is kind of what I hear you saying. And,
absolutely, and we do a lot of blaming. Yes.
So do you have ways that you get people over their blaming?
The first thing is to recognize that that's what's happening, is that, oftentimes people get stuck in the blaming and don't really want to see that they're the root of the issue, and that they can't change the other person, right? So the very first thing is just being aware that that's true.
Yes.
Right? And some people are willing to go there and some people aren't. And like in anything, you can't force people to see that the buck stops with them.
Right.
Right. But once you're aware, then you can start to look at what it is that you're doing that's creating the situation, or how can you change how you're reacting or communicating or trying to resolve conflict. What is it that you can do to impact your actions that is like throwing a rock into a still lake, right? It creates ripples, and those ripples affect the bank. They do, indirectly, right? Yeah. So as you start to work on yourself, it affects the people around you, and they start to change, which is completely contrary to the fact that you can't actually change anybody. And I know that when I say that, but it is indirectly. You're changing the relationship and the people on the other side, because relationships are always between two, right, or even three people, but 4 people, whatever, in groups, but really between you and the other person. And you do, as the relationship changes, the person on the other side of the relationship has to react to it differently.
Yeah. You're like in a dance. So if you change the steps you're taking, your partner has to change to go along with you. They have to make changes also.
Yep.
Or not. And if they don't, then you have to take another look at the relationship. So,
right. And then, what comes in there is you have to really ask yourself, what is it that I want? And is this in line with my values? Right.
You must have great discussions with your clients.
The best discussions. The best.
So Dana, talk about this and tell our listeners, why are relationships so important, and are they even more important today? I mean, can't we just do Facebook and Twitter and, Instagram and those things and have relationships? What more do we need?
Well, that is such a huge question. We need relationships, physical relationships, not like physical relationships like in bed, but physical relationships like face-to-face relationships, because there's something that is nurtured when you can look somebody in the eye, when you can really see a smile. And it's not quite the same way as like FaceTime, right, where you can look at each other inside a tablet. All you get to see there is really the face. But a relationship is so much more than just the way the face works. It's the body language. It's how you position yourself next to somebody when you're talking to them. And so face-to-face, real-life relationships, they're really important because they feed your soul. They keep you from being isolated. They real laughter is catching. Smiles are catching, just the same way that yawning is catching, right?
And that's the truth, yeah.
But yawning isn't catching online.
Oh, that's true. That's a good way to say it. I was reading a little blurb in a magazine this morning, and it said it was a father talking about why he had refused to give his 10-year-old an iPhone. And he said that it was because he thinks that all the electronic communication, the iPhones, are making the kids stupid. And it's making them emotionally stupid, because if you bully somebody using an iPhone, and say you're fat, you are not there and can't see the reaction, the impact of those words on that person. And so it's kind of okay to do it. But if you are present physically with that person and say you're fat, or throw another, zinger of some sort at them, you can see the impact. I mean, almost sometimes it's like a bullet, you know, and you can see their, as you say, their body reaction or their body language and feel their hurt and feel their pain. And he said, if we leave all this communication to, you know, texting and iPhones, we're going to, as you know, as human beings, lose that empathy, which is so important. I thought, oh, no, that's so interesting, and he said it so well, and it's so appropriate what we're going to talk about today. You know, that if you're not present, you don't see the impact. Interesting.
I think that's true, but I also think that there's a danger in throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. Technology actually is awesome.
Yes.
And things like Facebook and texting, they have provided a way to stay in touch with people and reclaim relationships and keep in contact with people that you would have lost. Mm-hmm. And many, many generations, before us lost touch with people that they've known their whole lives. Mm-hmm. Whereas when I look at my kids, are reunions even going to be important because they're going to already know what their friends have been up to.
Yeah.
So it's a really slippery slope to just say, okay, well, let's just take that technology out of the hands of our kids or out of our hands completely because
it's too late.
It's a tool.
Yeah. It's
right?
Too late. It's
too late.
Yeah. It's probably the swing out to everything on technology, is coming back to the middle. There was a piece on NPR recently where they're talking to some young people who are withdrawing from Facebook. And mm-hmm. Anyway, they talked to one young woman who has withdrawn from Facebook, and she said, two things about it. One is I feel bad when I get on my friends' Facebook pages and, they've got these fun, beautiful, interesting lives because that's what they post up there, and it makes me feel less than. It makes me feel like I'm missing out. And the other thing is that if I talk to everybody on Facebook all the time, if I see them and run into them, we don't have anything to say to each other because we've already got all the news. She said, so I'm just not going to do Facebook so much. I thought, see, we're swinging back to, we're not throwing it out, but we're going to moderate it and make it work for us instead of, we've just gone too far. We've gone too far with it. And I think that's what you're talking about. Now we're going to find a way to make it work.
Yeah, exactly. What I know about the younger generation is from 16 up because that's the ages of my kids, and so that's mm-hmm. who I'm interacting with all the time. And I know a lot of 20-something kids who have taken Facebook vacations.
Oh, interesting.
Yep, they just take some time off. Mm-hmm. And for some of the same reasons that woman said, and some just, they just don't want to be involved in knowing everything or being involved in everybody's life. They have other things to do. Uh-huh. But I do think that sometimes there's a bit of a generation gap in how we view how this technology works because we didn't grow up with it.
Right.
And our kids grow up with it's there. And we don't know so much the impact quite yet because, a 4-year-old who's had access to his parents' iPad since he was 3 to play games on, they haven't grown up enough for us to even know what the impact of it is.
That's true. I always tell my funny story about being with she was 3 years old at the time, my oldest granddaughter, and I took her to a puppet show. And we had a wonderful time, and she said, oh, Grandma, I just love this. Can we take a picture? Because after the show, the puppeteers came out and brought the puppets out. She said, can we take a picture? And I said, oh, honey, I didn't bring my camera. This little 3-year-old looked at me and rolled her eyes at me and said, use your cell phone. I love that story because I tell people what it did, as I said, oh, my goodness, I better get on with the technology, I better get fluent in it here, because otherwise I'm not going to have any way to relate to this young girl who is just growing up with it, just being at her fingertips all the time. And it's, for her, it's like combing your hair, brushing your teeth. Granny, you better get with it.
Yeah, it's how we were with the telephone, right?
Yeah.
But the telephone was just in your house. You just used it to connect with people in a way that, my grandmother never had that.
Yeah.
The telephone in her house or down the block on the corner was a much bigger deal.
Yes, you're right. You're right. And, even the switch to television, people probably think I'm from the dark ages, but I can remember when we got television in our house and what a big deal that was, to bring it into the house. And I was talking to a lady yesterday who's got her little boy is 5, and she said we didn't have our TV in the house for quite a long time, and then we brought it in and we thought, oh, they'll be very excited. The kids will be excited to have TV, and they kind of looked at it and and it didn't have any of the touch controls like things do now, on your iPad or your Surface, and it didn't operate the same way, and they're looking at it like, what's that? What is this that does that? It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's just changing madly. So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that for those of us who are over 50, it's a balance. We are not the ones that are growing up with technology, that grew up with technology. So for us, we need to know and pursue both sides. Face-to-face relationships that feed us, because that's what we know. That's what our expectations are. That's what all of our wiring, if you put it, is geared towards. And yet knowing technology enough so that we can relate to those in the younger generation for whom it's like breathing using these tools.
Yeah, yeah. And I do think, Dana, that there is a need that if you're into everything with technology, that there's just a basic human need that is going to bring you back to needing some level of person-to-person things. I think that's why we see meetups happening, or groups coming together, or, just redesigned social interactions that go on, because, human beings just need to be around each other.
Absolutely.
I think that's why coffee shops are such a big deal. I think there's so many people working solo, and the isolation is big, and so they take their computer and they go down and they work in the coffee shop so that they are around human conversation and, human interaction and, a buzz and activity going on, because they want to be near other people, And as I say, I think that's why coffee shops have gotten such so popular with people, because we do that for social interaction.
Yeah, and energy replenishment, right? Because you can feel the energy in your body, right? And if you're always by yourself, there's nothing feeding that. Whereas if you're in a coffee shop or, wherever you are with a bunch of people, even if you're not talking to one another, even if you're not touching, there's a group energy.
Yes.
That happens.
So moving on, what do you think are the key actions and behaviors that everybody's got to practice in order to build successful relationships? You started talking about that. You said the first thing we have to do is realize that it's not all about us, but that it comes from us. Is that what you teach a lot? Is that maybe
a lot? Thing? A lot. Fundamentally, I always say you can't see the frame if you're in the photograph, right? Okay. And when you're in the photograph, you're just completely in the situation, reacting to what's coming at you. But if you can step outside a little bit and take a different perspective or a different point of view, you can often see, oh, yeah, wait, if I just reacted just a little bit like this, then that would give me, that would make it easier for us to relate to each other. So I work a lot with my clients on changing their perspective or point of view so that they can see things from a different a different way, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, if you imagine an 8.5 sheet of paper, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, when you're looking at it to write on, it's a rectangle. But if all you ever see is it from the side, it looks like a line, and you kind of wonder why people are so crazy to tell you that you can write on this, because you can't write on that line. So what you really need to do is shift your eyes around so that you can see that it's a rectangle, and it's only then that it becomes useful.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's a good model.
Yeah, so now you have a different point of view, so I kind of do that with my clients, and oftentimes you need an objective somebody else to point you to the other point of view, because when you're in it, it's hard to see.
Yes, it is.
Another really important thing is appreciation. We don't appreciate each other enough. We don't say thank you enough. We don't, so many of us feel less than, or that we don't make a difference, or, why should I put myself out there, or any feelings of inadequacy. And all that it takes to make an impact there is to say, thank you so much for doing that for me. Or I really appreciate that you offered to help me in this way. It's just so simple, and yet it makes the biggest difference.
So do you give people exercises around that? I've talked to several people I've worked with over the years that do keep a gratitude journal, and have found that that's something that they can do to just track every single day a series of things for which they are grateful. So I do. I do it as part of, I give my clients homework between calls, but one of the things that starts from the very beginning is writing in a journal right before you go to bed, no more than 30 minutes before you go to bed, so that you go to sleep with it in your mind. And part of the things that they're writing is what they're grateful for that day. And, if you've had a hard day, it can be really difficult to come up with things that you're grateful for. Because you can go to bed and you're irritated. And so I often tell people, if it's one of those days, start with, I'm so grateful for having a bed to sit in while I write this list. Oh, that's so good.
I'm so grateful for the light that allows me to see what I'm writing. And if you start there and keep going, very quickly it flows into what you're really grateful for that day.
Oh, that's a really good exercise. That's great. So these are the kind of the fundamental things that you start with people then, Yeah,
there's one other thing that I find really important. We so often talk to people about what we don't want them to do. Don't forget to do this, or don't leave the door open, or don't lie to me. So we come from, and we often we speak to people from what we don't want. But if you turn it around and you speak to people from what you do want, please remember to bring home the milk. Please tell me the truth. I can take it. Please shut the door quietly. If you're always coming from what you do want, it creates a totally different dynamic between you and the other person.
Wow, that's interesting. So that's changing our language again, and so that sets up a better communication between you and the other party. I would think that would set up a better internal communication too, because you're always talking about what you want.
Exactly. And, to be perfectly honest, whatever it is that you're putting your attention on, you get more of. So if you tell somebody, don't forget the milk, the likelihood is they're going to forget the milk because you put that in their mind. But if you ask them to bring home the milk, they're much more likely to remember. So there's happiness there, right? There's a likelihood of you getting, not only asking for what you want, but getting what you want, rather than telling someone what you don't want and then getting what you don't want.
Yes.
I have people make a sign that they put up on their wall and on their desk that says, it's a big circle, and inside it says don't, not, and no, with a diagonal line through it, like it's a no smoking sign, and underneath it they write, so what do I want? And they put it up on the wall whenever, and they do it themselves, but also play this game with their kids and their grandkids where they catch each other saying one of those 3 words. And all they ask the other person is, so what do you want? And it changes dynamics in families.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah.
I'll bet it does. And because I know that the way we talk is so important, and so you're moving us to speak from a positive base, which really it can't help but improve relationship.
Absolutely.
Relationship with you, much less with other people.
Right.
Wow. Oh, that's so great. That sounds like magic, Dana.
It is kind of like magic.
Isn't that great?
It really is. It's kind of like magic.
Well, I mean, I think sometimes big things, and, you're talking about when you talk about it, it seems like a simple solution, but, it's hard to do because it's hard to change our habits. So this is
exactly
simple and critically important to think about and to see the world differently. I love it. That's so cool.
Yeah, it is cool. One of the things I tell my clients, though, because we have a tendency to try to be perfect, is that, I have been working on catching myself say don't for over 5 years, and I still say don't.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So you're not going to be perfect, but what you are going to do is change your speaking enough to create impact. And your brain, when you catch it, you'll notice. You say it, you notice. And it changes the way that you think of things. And like you said, it creates more positivity in how you feel about yourself, not irregardless of what's going on the outside, which changes.
Yeah. And as you said back at the beginning, when you make changes in yourself, they get reflected back. You get changes in the relationship and the interaction that you're having with others.
Absolutely.
Really, the only thing you can work with is yourself. So, as funny as that sounds, if you want to change others, what you have to do is change yourself, and then other people move because you have made the move. Kind of sounds kind of silly to think that sometimes, but that's really true, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. It really is.
Yeah. So Dana, when did you start your relationship expert business?
This business, so funny to say this. This business has been alive since May of 2013.
Right.
Yeah, so I just switched from what I was doing because I really wanted to have a bigger conversation. And it's been remarkable, the journey just in the last 8 months. And I wasn't expecting how much of a need there was out there in the world for help with relationships. Wow.
So good. So you really tuned in on something that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. More and more.
More and more. I think I'm just thinking of solopreneurship and encores and, how many millions, literally millions of people are, in these solo businesses, and how many people are encores, people 50 plus starting businesses and looking for ways to either support themselves in their, second half of life, as we call it, or support their retirement or supplement their retirement, and, are out there and, maybe they've worked in a job or in corporate America, as we like to call it, for 30 years, and now they're thinking, oh man, here I am, what do I do now? How do I build the rest of, good years in the rest of my life? And, if you're in that spot, I can see that people would seek you out, because if you are going to either create a business or find a job or, build a future, for yourselves, all of those things involve good relationships, good social relationships. That's how you're going to find a job. That's how you're going to find clients. That's how you're going to find social activities. That's how you're going to find volunteer opportunities. That's how you're going to find out about things going on. It's all going to be dependent on your relationship building skills.
That's really true, and I think there's I think there's something else also at work.
Yeah.
I think that as we get older and we see, life is not going to be forever, right? We actually can see that we're getting closer to perhaps not being around. And I am finding that my clients who are over 50, it's not just about taking any job or doing anything with the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. It's about how do I do something that I can be proud of, mm-hmm. right? How can I have relationships? How can I do something and then create relationships that feed me? Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life hating my days. Right. So there's this need for financial stuff, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Income, coupled with a very clear, I want to be happy.
Yes, and I want to do something meaningful.
And how do I make those two things happen? And a lot of my clients, about half of my clients are over 50, and when they come to me specifically about relationships, but having relationships be great touches on so many things for so many people. And we end up talking about and figuring out the impact that finances have on having great relationships, the impact about how you feel when you're working. What impact does that have on having a great relationship? Mm-hmm. And so we cover the whole, it's like a holistic approach, even though we look at it through a lens of relationship.
Oh, that's just fantastic. As I said, I think that you might have just started this in May, but it's clear to me that you've been honing your skills and building your personal philosophy and your approach that works and your way to help people see alternatives and make changes in your life. You've been doing that for years. And so it's culminated now in the business that you started last May. And I think that you are at a fabulous spot for what is happening in the world. I just think you're just right on for lots of things going on right now. You're timely, relevant, appropriate, meaningful. I mean, all those things that should have people work with you, and you are creating value for them in that way. That's what I'm hearing.
Thank you so much. You're making me blush.
That's cool. So
yeah.
How do you find your clients?
I find them in a variety of ways. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I network all the time. I'm always meeting new people, and so I make it a point to go out and be part of the community and meet new people. And from there, and from years of doing that, I have lots of contacts who have become my clients and now refer me to the people in their lives. So I get a lot of referrals. I have a very active Facebook page, and I get clients from there as well. So they kind of come from all over the place.
Well, that's kind of cool. And,
yeah.
One of the best ways, of course, as we always talk about, is to get a personal referral. If somebody seeks you out and kind of finds you on the web or finds you because of SEO and they wind up with your website, they're still a little bit nervous about it. But if they get a personal referral where somebody says, oh, my goodness, I've had the most wonderful experience working with Dana, and I've learned this and this and this, and this has changed, and this has gotten better, I mean, they're going to call you up and hire you without even talking to you practically.
That happens quite a bit.
Charge.
Yeah, right. That actually happens quite a bit. And people who find me on the web and have never met me, mm-hmm. I have clients who are totally willing, available, and want to give me references. So if somebody doesn't know me and they want to talk to somebody with whom I've worked, I always hook them up with my clients or my past clients so that they can ask them whatever they want. And my clients are actually like, no, I want to do it. No, I want to do it.
How gratifying.
It's really awesome.
It must be. It must be just very gratifying. I mean, just, you have a lot of stuff to put in your gratitude journal.
Yeah, I love my clients, and yeah, it's really great.
Dana, how do you work with your clients? Do you work with them one-on-one? Do you do classes? Do you do phone-ins? Do you do groups? What's the structure of how you work with people?
Well, up until just recently, all I have been doing is one-on-one work, and I work with my clients for 6 months at the least, because it takes that long, not only to see what's happening, but to change your habits.
So do you sign a 6-month contract with them, or have okay? Yep,
we sign a 6-month contract. Some of my clients, after the 6 months, re-up for another 6 months. And I'm in the process of putting together a group program that is scheduled to start. Well, it was scheduled to start in February, but it looks like it's going to start in March because I have some technological learning to do to make it all work. But that will be a program that is designed for a group of people it's not quite as heavy touch with me, but you get all the information, and there'll be some interviews, and there'll be homework, and they'll get coaching with me, an hour of coaching with me during that 6-month group program.
Oh, that's great.
So that's brand new.
What I find from my groups, I do Better, Smarter, Richer study groups and cohorts. What I find is the value of the cohort is that they coach each other. And, they hold each other accountable to doing, what they said they would do. And if somebody hasn't gotten something done, someone else will say, Martha, the last time we talked, you said you were going to do blah, blah, blah. What happened to that? And I don't have to be the person that's doing that. I can be dealing with some other issue. And that really is nice, because sometimes it's nice to have that, that push, that accountability push come from someone else in the group, not just you. And
exactly. It's also one of the, as I said, there are positive and negatives about technology, but one of the great things about Facebook, for instance, is that we can create a group that's totally secret, that's just a meeting place where people can support each other. And when it comes to something like relationships, which is really personal, right? I mean, it's really, and for many of my clients, it's also really private, right? They don't want to just talk to anybody. So it creates a safe space for people who are committed to the same things in their own lives where they have some privacy and they can support each other and yet still keep things private.
Sure. That's kind of nice. Aren't the e-tools just absolutely fabulous?
They are. I have to admit, I really love my technology. Yeah. I don't know if I've gone wildly, excitedly into it, but because I feel like I've had to learn, speaking a whole new language. But I certainly have learned how to use it a long way from my 3-year-old, granddaughter rolling her eyes at me. Come a long way since then, and that's really kind of nice. So, do you have one thing that you feel is the single most important coaching advice that you find yourself giving your clients again and again? Yeah, the one thing that you always want to come back to is asking yourself, is this what I want? What do I want? Not from a point of view of being selfish, but from a point of view of keeping you aligned with what's important to you. I think that we don't ask ourselves often enough if what we're doing is aligned with what we want and what we hold most important, our values, and when we pay attention to that, and it's a little bit like listening to our internal, it's not so much an internal voice, but it's like a barometer of rightness, right? Of, this relationship, even though it's not quite we're not quite getting along, it's really important to me to work this out because this is what I want. So it is worth the effort.
Yeah.
Whereas keep banging my head against the wall in terms of trying to get this relationship to work out, why am I doing that? Is it really what I want? Is it really giving me what I want? Is this where I want to be? And so it gives us a place to true ourselves.
Those are just all good questions, aren't they? Really all good questions. So what I'm hearing is that your practice isn't just little techniques. It's really deep thinking about the value of this relationship and how committed you are to making it work and how much time and energy and attention. You know, attention span, it has been said that our attention span is the most scarce resource we have. You know, how much attention are you going to bring to this so that you can be aware of what you say, how you speak, the impact you have on others, how they react to you, and, you know, adapt accordingly so that it works.
Yeah, that's the truth. You know, there's a saying that it's good relationships take hard work, and I don't believe that. I believe that good relationships take time or attention, like you said. You cannot nurture a great relationship if you aren't going to give it your time.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a big deal in our very fast-moving world. You know, to cut something out or put it in a position where you give it more time. I totally agree with that. You just have to put the time in and make it happen. And so if you have maybe fewer, deeper relationships, that might make you happier than a whole lot of, you know, more surface relationships. And you got to think about that too. What do I really want in my life?
Yep. And there are no shortcuts to giving time.
Yeah, yeah. So what happens to people as they age if they're not good at developing and maintaining good relationships? You know, what do you see happening, even if they're not meeting people?
Isolation. Feeling isolated and getting depressed is what happens when, as you get older, if you aren't, and it's not just if you're not good at creating relationships, but if you're not conscious about keeping your relationships. And, I think it's creating relationships with people, maintaining relationships with people, and like keeping your skills oiled are probably the number one thing that will help keep us from being depressed as we get older, as we age.
I think that even having a strong social network and good relationships is kind of one of the, you know, the health indicators for people. You know, that if you get into that isolation, depression, it literally shortens your life. You know, your lifespan, your years, because it has such a toll on your health and well-being. And I think there's been a huge realization of that out in the medical community, that, you know, relationship building is great. And so do you see that the people need different skills, or that they just need to stop and pay attention and think about, you know, your questions, what do I want? How much am I willing to devote to it? How important is it to me? And can I then, you know, begin paying attention to other people and put aside my sense of blame and judgment, you know, those things that get in the way of good relationships? Are there new skills, or is it just paying attention and reminding of some of the skills we probably learned as children?
Well, you know, I think that it really depends on the person. You know, some of us are just social by nature, and we've spent our life meeting people and putting ourselves in situations where we're creating new relationships, and then it's really important to us to maintain our relationships. Where there are other people who, you know, their lives, maybe they revolve completely around a very small group, even just their family or whatever, and then it's a whole new world out there when they realize, oh, okay, well, now I'm more on my own, or, right, things have changed. And so then it's about learning to meet people. And the biggest step is to just do it. it can be really scary. You know, what if we have all that self-judgment, all that doubt? What if they don't like me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I whatever? But until if you can just make yourself go do something that where there are other people and keep going back, that's how friendships are formed. That's how relationships are formed. Mm-hmm. And for some people, it really is just about, gritting their teeth and doing it in the face of the fear. Yeah. Boy, fear is such a big issue, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness. We've talked about that before, too. So, you know, we have all this, as you say, internal dialogue that's going on, and you know, we listen to it. I'm not good enough. I'm not adequate. I'm not important enough. I'm not blah, 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 you know. And, you know, that raises the fear, and we get into that kind of thinking, and it's just absolutely terrible to go forward. So if we've got a few minutes left here, can you think of 3 things or 1 or 2 things that every listener to our show can do right away today to strengthen their relationships or their relationship building skills? More than what I've said. Advice in a box here. Yeah. You know, don't take the relationships that you have for granted. Oh, yeah. Right? The ones that are important to you, really, the ones that feed you, make sure that you set aside time to spend with those people, even if it's just making a phone call and talking to them. Just reach out and make sure that you're reaching out and touching them on a regular basis so that you can feed that. So that for sure is one. The second thing is I just can't stress enough the language, being aware of asking for things that you want rather than asking for things telling people not to do things that you don't want. That really changes the dynamic in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And the third thing is when you catch yourself blaming somebody for a relationship that's not going well, that it's that other person's fault, to take a minute and look and see what your culpability might be. Yeah. Very good. Wise advice. Wise advice. Yes. And if you're like the rest of us, it's what you do is you work really hard in your life to reach the point where you have this kind of wisdom to share. So right on, Dana. It's great. So thanks, Jackie. Yeah. We've had a great discussion. I've enjoyed every minute of it, taken lots of notes, actually. And so if some of our listeners are just kind of bouncing up and down and eager to contact you because of, you know, your wisdom and your time on the program, how can they get hold of you? Well, they can call me and leave it, you know, if they can't get through, I'm on the phone a lot, but just leave a message, and I return phone calls within 24 hours. My phone number is 503-789-5606. They can go to my website, which is modernrelationshipexpert.com, and if they look under the Learn More button, there's a questionnaire there, and which gets sent, and somebody from my team will be in touch with them within 3 days, and we can set up a time to talk. But, you know, I was thinking this morning about what I really wanted to do for you and the people that were listening, because it's just been great being here, having this conversation. And so my plan is I have 20 slots for a free 30-minute reboot your relationship patterns session with me for your listeners only. So the first 20 people that call and want that 30-minute free session with me, they're going to get it. And I just have limited time in my calendar for the next 2 weeks, so I can only do 20 of them. And what will happen is, what we'll do is we'll create a crystal clear vision of the relationships how you want to have them. What is it that you want out of your relationships? We'll uncover the hidden challenges that might be sabotaging their success in having the relationships be the way that you want. And really, after our conversation, you'll leave the session renewed and re-energized and really inspired to create amazing relationships in your life. And I am really looking forward and hoping that people will take me up on this, because it is one of the most profound conversations that we can have.
Wow. So listeners, take her up on it. This is a good offer. And, if you call Dana and say, I heard you on Better, Smarter, Richer, Solo Pro Radio, I'd like to have one of those 20 slots. This is great. And, you can tell from the conversation we've had today that you're going to get really good, practical, grounded advice. So, Dana, I've loved having you on. I've just thoroughly enjoyed our discussion, and we're out of time, but thank you again. And I want to say to our listeners that this, again, is Jackie B. Peterson, and I'm the author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Encores, Solo, and Creatives, those of you in one-person businesses. Those businesses can be just about anything in the world. And as you've paid attention and are a regular listener, you know that we've talked to people who are in all kinds of different products and services that they are doing. So I hope that they inspire you. I hope my guests inspire you not only to take the advice that they have to offer, but also to see that there are ways to be financially successful in a solo in almost any calling that you can name. So I hope you go to my website, bettersmarterricher.com. You can download the free ebook outlining the 7 principles, and you can sign up for the free newsletter and join the conversation on the blog. And, of course, we hope that you will tune in next week for our Solo Pro Radio show. Again, we're going to be talking to another excited, interested, and wise guest, just as we have today. So thank you for being with us, and we'll hear from you, and you'll hear from us next week. Goodbye.